So President Trump has been taking a lot of heat from his administration's zero tolerance policy at the border. Now, that policy has led to more families being separated at the border, which leads to, of course, videos and audio of children that are desperately begging for their families to see their families, and, of course, being held in conditions that are not very good. Now, Donald Trump, of course, says, well, it's not my fault. I'm just enforcing the laws that are on the books. No, the real fault is the Democrats. In fact, earlier today, he made a few tweets, as of course he does. He said, quote, Democrats are the problem. They don't care about crime and want illegal immigrants. No, we don't. No matter how bad they may be, to pour into and infest our country like MS-13. They can't win on their terrible policies, so they view them as potential voters. There is so much wrong with that. Just a comparison, they're infesting the country like they're insects. Again, the dehumanization is just incredible. And again, that's not even the worst part. He continues to say, change the laws. Now is the best opportunity ever for Congress to change the ridiculous and obsolete laws on immigration. Get it done. Always keeping in mind that we must have strong border security. And then finally, he tweeted, we must always arrest people coming into our country illegally. Of the 12,000 children, 10,000 are being sent by their parents on a very dangerous trip, and only 2,000 are with their parents, many whom have tried to enter our country illegally on numerous occasions. So you can get where he's coming from. I think he's contradicting himself. Change the laws. And also, we must always arrest people coming into the country illegally. But wait, the whole problem with the policy is that you're arresting them and charging them with a felony for coming into the country illegally, which leads to the separation of families. Either you want to fix it or you don't. But again, he's not a very smart person. But going further from, of course, Trump's tweets, because again, we know he's stupid, let's go into the actual policy of this, right? Now, they said, he keeps saying, Democrats, if only the Democrats would do their job and actually support some legislation or put up legislation of their own. Well, that's exactly what the Democrats did. According to The Hill, every Senate Democrat has now co-sponsored legislation that would prohibit children from being separated from their parents within 100 miles of the U.S. border, except for instances of abuse, neglect, or other specific circumstances. It's actually called the Keep Families Together Act. That's fairly simple. This was introduced earlier this month by Dianne Feinstein. So this is like one of those no shit kind of pieces of legislation, and it's like, hey, we're mad about you separating families. I know, let's put in a law that says maybe we shouldn't separate families unless there's, of course, a case of neglect. Now, by the way, one of the arguments that I do see a lot from Trump supporters and supporters of this policy is, well, CPS does that all the time to American families. Usually there has to be some sort of case or allegation of abuse and neglect. Then that's perfectly fine, because then you're taking the child out of a dangerous situation. But anyway, now, currently, if a mother and child enter the U.S. illegally, the mother is sent to a federal jail or other detention center to await prosecution. Now, of course, we have a law in the books that says that children cannot be held in adult facilities. Now, that's actually a court decision called the Flores Settlement. And that's actually really important because now the GOP also has their own version of this sort of piece of legislation. Now, thanks to that, they are put into the custody of the Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement. So, look, that's what's happening now. And of course, the Office of Refugee Resettlement is putting children into cages and keeping them in conditions that are not good for children and actually doing lasting psychological or emotional harm. So, now, that's what they're doing. This bill would prevent migrant families from being split apart. How they would do that, what they would do with immigrants, I'm not exactly sure that come over the border. But at least they wouldn't separate the families. Now, how many Republicans support the bill? None. Zero. Nada. No Senate Republicans have issued any support in this bill. Now, to be fair, let's go over to the House Republicans, right? Now, House Republicans did try to address the issue in a broad immigration bill that would also fund the border wall. Provide a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. Okay, dreamers. I'm in favor of a pathway to citizenship that is fair, that is not overly punitive, that makes sure that people come here, they already pay taxes, get an education, work, etc. Yeah, I'm actually in support of something like that. A pathway to citizenship that is fair and that is timely. I'd say maybe within 5 to 10 years, pathway to citizenship. You follow the rules, you don't commit violent crime, etc., right? Now, the GOP plan, from what I remember, is actually far more draconian than that. So Democrats were like, no, we're not going to work with you on this unless you scale back. And besides, we're not going to give you money for that stupid wall. Now, in this also, Republicans wanted to end the diversity visa lottery program and limit family-based migration. So, in total, we're going to make sure we don't separate kids from their families at the border. But in return, we want to limit legal immigration. We want to cut legal immigration by half. Well, Democrats obviously did not go for that, and that's good because they were actually strong on that position. Now, look, again, if you're a Republican, if you're Donald Trump, you're going to sit there and blame Democrats anyway for that. And look, I'm not the biggest fan of Democrats right now, but at the same time, I'm actually going to defend them on this because, look, the Republican plan wouldn't have fixed the problem anyway. Again, it just would have been more draconian. And what it would have done is that it would have relaxed the Flores settlement, and children would have still ended up being separated from their parents, albeit not for as long of a time. That is still disastrous. That is still the same policy. So Democrats and Republicans, for the most part, they're not on the same page. Now, I do, ironically, have to give some credit to a Republican, somebody that I actually don't get along with, somebody that I don't agree with at all. Ted Cruz. Who saw that twisty twist, right? But let's get into it. Now, Axios reported earlier today that Cruz will be introducing something called the Protect Kids and Parents Act this week. Well, isn't that interesting? Now, let me get into the details, because, again, the devil is often in the details. He says, it says that the bill would outlaw the separation of families who cross the border illegally unless there is aggravated criminal activity or potential harm to the child. Well, that makes sense. Now, there is more. Excuse me. This would also double the number of immigration judges at the border. Okay. Authorize new shelters for families, and speed up the asylum adjudication process. Now, most of these children are asylum seekers, so that would actually speed up the process, and that's a good thing. So, look, this is not a bad bill, but nonetheless, the Democrats also have a very simple piece of legislation. Why is Ted Cruz not signing on to that as well? I realize he has his own piece of legislation, and yes, it is decent for what we know about it. But at the same time, it is kind of strange how both are, and look, we can understand Ted Cruz. This is politically motivated. He is right now in the middle of a primary against Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke is actually outraising Ted Cruz significantly. So Texas is more of a battleground than you think. So there's a very good chance that, again, this is politically motivated. But at the end of the day, if we get the right policy, I don't care why somebody introduces it. But if Cruz is serious, then he would also sign on to the Democratic-led effort led by, again, somebody that I'm not a big fan of, Dianne Feinstein. So I don't care who gets credit for the legislation. I just want the legislation. I just want something to get passed that is decent, something that actually stops this practice and doesn't go full punitive on immigrants or doesn't take any away from anywhere else. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping they can at least get together to sign one of these pieces of legislation and end this barbaric practice. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.